Welcome. It's time. It's time to drop in, open up, and receive. It's time to remember. It's time to believe. Let's elicit the beautiful, the good, and the true. It's time for me. It's time for you. Hello. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your girl, Jillian Melissa. And today it's time to talk about something that I actually really don't want to talk about. I feel a lot of discomfort already in my body. I kind of feel like I'm going to throw up. So thank you for bearing with me. I am guided to speak on this topic anyway. This is something that I've really been studying since about 2006. And unfortunately, despite my rigorous academic, intellectual pursuits in the matter and my vast personal experience, this phenomenon is still something that I fall prey to, which is part of why it is so difficult to speak on. This is cluster B personality disorders. Today we're going to be talking about truly toxic people, narcissistic personality disorder, psychopaths, sociopaths, borderline personality disorder. And again, I'm not a therapist, and I'm not going to be whipping out a DSM and just going through diagnostic criteria. You can do that on your own time, and there are plenty of therapists who talk about these phenomenon, and I'm sure you know plenty, but maybe you don't know a lot. And in a session I had recently, a client of mine encountered a moment where she realized someone in her life was displaying traits that perhaps put them in this category of person, and it's not normal. And so it can become very destabilizing and unsettling when you're dealing with somebody who is operating very differently than you are through this world. I want to speak about the energetic and spiritual phenomenon that are going on with these types of personalities, but that's not what today is mostly going to entail. We have a lot of groundwork to cover, Spirit is telling me, before I can fully launch into that. So maybe, 400 episodes from now. I will sprinkle in a few nuggets for those of you who have spiritual sight or have activated any of your spiritual senses. I think those little add-ins will be helpful, but this episode is a much more 3D grounded episode. It's much more pragmatic, and that is by design. So again, ask your body, as always, what you need. I need to place my hand on my heart and just tell myself it's okay. It's okay to talk about these topics, even if I still succumb to these dynamics. Perhaps it's from that inside, sort of in an anthropological way, that inside view that I can actually give you data that will serve you. My hope is that this really does serve you in any relationships you currently have with people who might be pathological in this way, and also helps you screen, moving forward in your life. Use your discernment if you're dating, when you're starting new employment opportunities. Okay, my boss did this. Is that actually normal? Is that healthy? Is that okay? You get it. I'm going to start just by mentioning The Wizard of Oz again, because interestingly enough, my favorite feature film of all time, the language from it has been used by a lot of people who discuss narcissism and borderline personality disorder. I don't want to talk about it. I'm getting itchy. Okay, it's okay. It's okay, Jillian. You're going to be okay. Flying monkeys from the movie are often used to describe the people in a narcissist's life who do their bidding, do their dirty work, often family members, their enablers. And Oz, Welcome to Oz, is actually the name of a borderline support group. Flying Monkeys Denied is a narcissism support group. So yeah, there's just a lot of language from the movie, which is so fascinating because one of my great life lessons seems to be centered around these personality types. And there's a lot of symbols from my favorite movie right in there. And there's a brilliant scene in Munchkin Land. The first time we meet the Wicked Witch, Glinda says to her, "You have no power here." And then the Wicked Witch says, "I'll bide my time." And there's a clear awareness in that first encounter where Dorothy gets those ruby red slippers. The Wicked Witch wants to take them, and Glinda's saying, you can't actually do anything because I rule here, I reign here. You know, the angel versus devil moment. Why I bring this up is because I want to remind all of us that, you know, God has Satan on a leash, to use more Christian languaging. The light is more powerful than the dark. Lots of traditions speak to this, but the light has already won. Shake that off, Bubba. So if you're a person of the light interacting with one of these darker individuals that we're going to be discussing today, if you find yourself entrenched in these dynamics with these darker people who seem like they might have demons on them, that they might have a spirit working on them that is not of the light, and we'll discuss the more 3D manifestations of that phenomenon today. You can remember the way you win is through your spiritual authority. It's through your spiritual power. And the light has already won. So I do just want to have that as our backdrop today, because we are going to be talking about some kind of dirty, phenomenon. And part of why I did just sort of throw in there, you know, narcissism as a spirit is, interestingly, in addition to the characteristics that you would find in a diagnostic manual to actually diagnose someone with narcissistic personality disorder, there are a lot of things that narcissists have in common that seem pretty odd and specific. Things male narcissists, for example, do. They often pee sitting down. They often emit a particular sour odor. They often have these sort of black eyes these demon eyes when they get angry. There are certain things that are not just a part of what therapists would say are the traits of narcissism, like lacking empathy or the self-centeredness. It seems kind of odd, but these characters seem to have these very specific things in common, which a lot of spiritual people tend to lean into. Perhaps there is an actual energetic spirit, like a Jezebel spirit, that is possessing people. And that's why they have all of these sort of peculiarities in common. But again, I'm not spending too much time today at all on the metaphysical, spiritual plane level. I really want to ground this in and talk to those of you who are boots on the ground. Just talk 3D language. One more thing I'd like to say about narcissists before we veer into the land of psychopaths, where I think we're going to be for the bulk of this episode. The Wizard of Oz is often portrayed as that textbook narcissist, in large part because he hides behind a curtain and projects this image of being great and powerful that is not real, not based in reality. And a lot of what we talk about today might feel heavy, and it can feel overwhelming when you're considering that there are people who are moving through the world protecting their image at all costs to such a degree where they might inflict harm upon you on purpose and not care. They might actually, my buddy Marshall last night was describing to me the difference between sinning and practicing sin. This is from a Christian lens of sinning. When you sin, you're making mistakes. We all sin. Practicing sin is working to be better at the craft. So someone who practices sin is somebody who goes through lengths to try to figure out how to lie to you better, how to hide that they're sleeping with other partners better and more thoroughly, and how to get you more addicted to their energy. And they actually go out of their way to get better at hurting you. That can feel, again, so dark. At least for me, it is so, it feels like, someone just like suctioning out my light. So I want to anchor in an analogy that I heard two dudes talking about that I just loved. Hopefully, again, this is not to minimize the damage that these types of individuals can do, sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths. It's, again, not at all to minimize the damage and not at all to say you should condone their behavior and stay in relationship with them. I just want to sort of offer this lens because I think it's whimsical and also reminds you truly of your spiritual ranking. And like the Wicked Witch, they have no power in the land of the light. So this is the analogy, a car alarm. I think this is so brilliant. The main way narcissists condition others into submission is the same way a car alarm conditions people into submission. It's not so much that when a car alarm goes off, when you hear them, that someone's actually in danger, or that you even fear that a car is getting broken into. More often than not, when that sound goes off, it is so fucking annoying that all you can think of is, whose fucking car is that? I'm cursing, imitating these guys. Whose fucking car is that? Someone turn that off. And every other need becomes secondary to turning off that unpleasant experience. Every other need, including all of your own needs, becomes secondary to the need of, oh my gosh, somebody make this stop. That's weaponized against people in such a way where people are like, okay, I know I have my needs. I know that I have emotional needs, physical needs. I get that they're not being met in this relationship or in this moment with this person, with this narcissist. But right now, this narcissist has just amped it up to such a point where what I need to deal with first before my needs is turning this unpleasant experience off, making this stop. And then especially when you have extreme empathy, or like me, I've worked the last 5 years to continue to cultivate my sensitivity, to grow and grow my empathy, to be better and better at working as an intuitive healer and teacher and guide and mentor and trainer. And, that has implications also for my personal life. When I've dialed up that extreme empathy to such a degree, not only does it become about the car alarm going off, but it also becomes, okay, now I've noticed that it might go off in these set of circumstances, and I'm noticing that we're on the edge of that, so I have to pull back or I have to modulate things so we don't get there. So then it becomes about anxiously attempting to prevent the car alarm going off. What do you need? How can I fix this? And that can be a very precarious place to be. But again, I want to remind you that the essence of this metaphor is that the narcissist throwing a fit, it's empty. It's like the car alarm that never really signifies true danger. And again, I'm not saying that you're not actually in danger with these individuals. I very much think you are. But I mean that in the sense of, if you can realize that their dramatics are a front, in the same way the great and powerful Oz is a front, perhaps you can start to then pull back, come to your center, and actually reprioritize your needs. And then, of course, don't set off the car alarm, but also don't hang out with someone who's an erupting car alarm every 2 weeks, It really is important to remove yourself from these types of dynamics. And I'm hesitant, again, to talk about this. Part of my resistance is that I have seen in spiritual communities over the years how it's very easy to demonize other people, to point the finger and be like, my mom is toxic, this friend is toxic, block, shut out, and think you're healing when actually you're just removing triggers. And I'm not an advocate for that in any way. However, there are personality types that absolutely are dangerous, that we need to distance ourselves from. Lastly, I will say, well, it's not going to be the last thing I say today, don't you worry, but lastly, before we bop on over to another part of the podcast that's being edited in, because now I'm in the future. Oh, man. There's a song, My Head and My Heart by Ava Max. It samples Around the World, a 2000 Eurodance song. La, 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 la. It goes around the world, and hopefully I'm allowed to sing and not have copyright infringement. But there's a line where, it's such a banger. Angels tell me run, and monsters call it love. Angels tell me run, and monsters call it love. And so today, starting right now, as we finally go to where the meat and potatoes of this episode is, this is the angels telling you, here's what to look for, and then run. I'd mentioned before, I believe in the first episode of this calendar year, it's time to forecast 2025, the book Psychopath Free by Jackson MacKenzie. I highly recommend this book. I know the language psychopath sounds very strong, and it is. It is very strong indeed. But unfortunately, most of us weren't taught when we were little that there are people in this world who are psychopaths. I certainly remember stranger danger, and I remember in elementary school really being told, you only go with adults you trust. But it wasn't because I was also told that some people are really quite dark. I was taught the golden rule, treat everyone with kindness, treat people the way you want to be treated. And in fact, in the case of sociopaths, psychopaths, and narcissists, I do not advise that. I think that's actually really unhealthy advice. But for those of us who are compassionate and caring, you just want to be kind to everyone, right? And you just want to love people till they feel better. It's often the natural inclination. Okay, Psychopath Free by Jackson MacKenzie. I loved how Jackson started the book, Introduction, an adventure. I'm listening to this audiobook in the depths of suffering and despair for myself, for a client who's also attempting to leave a psychopath. I'm personally reckoning with, is this person in my life actually a full-blown psychopath? Have I been totally duped again? So I get this audiobook, I'm listening to it, and I'm just laughing because, part of that is my coping strategy, but it also was funny to me how the introduction really positioned this in such a positive light. But it's true. Finding yourself involved with a psychopath is going to be a very dark journey. It's going to throw you into spells of depression, rage, and loneliness. It'll probably unravel your deepest insecurities, but ultimately, Jackson writes, it will heal you, and you will become stronger than you could ever imagine and discover precisely who you were meant to be in the process of healing yourself from this type of relationship. What we're really talking about here is manipulative people devoid of empathy who intentionally cause harm to others without any sense of remorse or responsibility. Again, I was not taught when I was younger that there were people like this in the world. And sure, maybe I saw things on the news about people were killed, but I didn't necessarily make that cognitive leap into, okay, there are cruel people in the world. There are people who actually get pleasure out of hurting other people. And we are in very polarizing times. I think a lot of people who were able to mask their psychopathy are becoming unmasked. And so you might see an uptick of these types of energies in your life. And I'm sharing a lot of this to help hopefully prevent you from falling into some of the traps that I have fallen into in my own life. But right now, I really want to hone in on Jackson MacKenzie's list of red flags. Again, his book is Psychopath free, so we're using the language of psychopath, but there's a lot of commonality with a lot of these disorders, and there's also a lot of shared diagnoses. A lot of people who are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder are also diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, right? So there's a lot of overlap. But the bottom line of all these disorders is that their relationship cycles can be predicted like clockwork. They idealize you, they devalue you, they discard you. Idealize, devalue, discard. My hope is that with some open dialogue, with education, with validation, and with self-discovery, we can all heal, so none of us find ourselves entrenched in harmful dynamics with these types of individuals. And while this journey can feel really, really personal and uniquely your own when you're going through it, it's also very universal. So many people have dealt with this. So many people have found themselves entrenched in this type of dynamic, so you are not alone. Common characteristic of departing this type of connection, when you finally make your way out, however that happens, if this person discarded you or they forced your hand, forcing you to discard them, generally your mind is left spinning. You often feel worthless, lost, numb to things that once made you happy, often uprooting your entire life, ending friendships, changing careers. There can be a lot of immediate change that your vessel feels is necessary when you come to. Often it takes years to fully understand if you are in any sort of psychopathic dynamic. So now we're going to go into those 30 red flags for spotting toxic people. We're going to do it. So ask your body what you need before we do. 30 red flags. 30. Again, this is not my own list. This is Jackson MacKenzie's. I'm very grateful for this list, but I did not create it. You might hear me riffing as I go point by point, but hopefully you'll be able to tell when it's Jillian riffing and when I'm just sharing the list. I think that'll be self-explanatory. What made this red flags list really unique to me was that each point, each list item requires introspection and self-awareness. Because if you want to spot toxic people, you cannot focus entirely on their behavior. That's only half the battle. You actually have to come to recognize the looming red flags in your own heart. And that can actually be a really, really, really excruciating process. That having had been said, let's start the list. I hope you're not abandoning your body. So get yourself some water, a snack, whatever you need. Let's dive in. Number 1, gaslighting and crazy making. These characters blatantly deny their own manipulative behavior, and they ignore evidence when confronted with it. They become dismissive and critical if you attempt to disprove their fabrications with facts. Instead of actually addressing their inappropriate behavior, somehow it always becomes your fault for being too sensitive or being crazy. Toxic people like this condition you to believe the problem isn't the abuse itself, but instead your reactions to their abuse. 1, gaslighting and crazy making. And Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way, which is a beloved resource for creatives all around the world, talks about crazy makers. And she's really talking about this type of character. So while I've got you, let's talk about crazy makers through this lens for just a moment. Might be more accessible for those of you who are really put off by the languaging of psychopath or feel like that's a little too extreme. So Cameron writes that creatives often avoid being creative by involving themselves in crazy makers. Crazy makers are those personalities that create storm centers. They are often charismatic, frequently charming, highly inventive, and powerfully persuasive. Charismatic individuals who are out of control, long on problems, short on solutions. And she describes some of the ways in which they can sabotage your life. And so I encourage you to check out The Artist's Way, but she describes crazy makers break deals and destroy schedules. Her example is they show up 2 days early for your wedding and expect to be waited on hand and foot, right? So there's a degree of entitlement. Crazy makers expect special treatment. Crazy makers discount your reality. Crazy makers spend your time and money. Crazy makers triangulate those they deal with, and this is super important. I'm going to talk more about triangulation later. But for a moment, triangulation, a huge tactic that these personality types use. Because crazy makers thrive on energy, your energy, they set people against one another in order to maintain their own power position dead center. That's where they can feed most directly on the negative energies they stir up. That's a very, very real phenomenon. And when you hear people talking about narcissistic relationship recovery, you'll hear languaging like supply and the new target. Often, male psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists in romantic relationships will triangulate the current, girlfriend, partner, woman, whomever, with either the ex or the new target. And the new target might not just be a potential romantic partner. It might even be a married woman that's in the friend group, but there's a flirtation and maybe this, married woman is giving him like so much love and adoration, and it feels even better because this woman's actually married. So it's like, it's inappropriate, and it's like she can't resist, even though she has a husband. She's so infatuated with me. Drawing on an example from someone who used to be in my life. So yeah, these people will triangulate energies intentionally. If my ex was feeding off of me being worried about his previous girlfriend, or me being worried about this new woman that he seems to be like enthralled with and always going out with, like if there's always another woman that I'm being pitted against, and he's doing the same on her side too, always venting to her about me, or why couldn't you be like Jillian, or like Jillian this, but not like that, and mentioning my name, this man got to be dead center in feeding off of both of our energies. So that's a very classic trait of crazy makers, triangulation. The direct way that shows up is like, so-and-so is telling me you didn't get to work on time today, a crazy maker may relay. So then you get mad at so-and-so, and you miss the fact that the crazy maker has used hearsay to set you off kilter emotionally. Right, my ex used to be like, I have to get you through the mean girls in order to get you invited to this wedding. Like positioning me, who are these mean girls? Why are they mean? Why are they blockading me? Like immediately creating a scenario for triangulation. And you can hear the rage in my voice, so I'm gonna keep going. Back to the text. Crazy makers are expert blamers. Crazy makers create dramas, but seldom where they belong. It's very fascinating. Crazy makers hate schedules except their own, so time is their primary tool for abuse. If you claim a certain block of time as your own, your crazy maker will find a way to fight you for that time, or to mysteriously need things just when you need to be alone or focused. Crazy makers hate order. Chaos actually serves their purposes. So when you begin to establish a place that serves you and your creativity, your crazy maker will abruptly invade that space with projects of his own. And most notably, crazy makers deny that they are crazy makers. And of course, Julia Cameron raises the most important question: if crazy makers are that destructive, what are we doing involved with them? And the answer, to be brief but brutal, is that we're that crazy ourselves and we are that self-destructive. There's more compassion and, possibility later on in the text. But yeah, we need to be examining, as I said earlier, those looming red flags in our own hearts so that we don't continue to attract and entertain or even seek out crazy makers. Thank you for joining me on that crazy making sidebar. Back to our 30 red flags list. 2, they cannot put themselves in your shoes or anyone else's. You found yourself desperately trying to explain how they might feel if you were treating them this way. Okay, so if you're in a relationship with this type of person, they've hurt you. You're standing there looking at them, desperately appealing to them. If I did this to you, if 2 days before your birthday, I blah, 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 wouldn't you be so, And they just stare right back at you blankly, or invalidate your feelings, or give you silence. So you slowly learn not to communicate your feelings with them. Maybe it's not so slow, maybe you learn quickly. But at whatever pace you learn not to communicate your feelings with them because you're usually met with silence or annoyance. I don't know which I felt was worse. The silence is rough, you feel completely unacknowledged, but the annoyance is also brutal, right? You're just irritated at just hearing my feelings, right? Pretty oofy. Number 3, they're the ultimate hypocrite. Also, you're going to hear me bouncing around with tense as you already do. You, I'm going to try to put us all in different roles. So don't get too hyperfixated on first person, second person. Hopefully I can keep a degree of consistency that makes sense. But I also want you to imagine, what if any of these traits might you actually embody, right? Not just listening, screening for, was my ex a psychopath? Just keeping an open mind as you listen to these traits. Number 3, they're the ultimate hypocrite. Do as I say, not as I do. They have extremely high expectations for fidelity, respect, and adoration. After the idealization phase, where they've hyped you up, they'll give none of that back to you. The fidelity, the respect, the adoration that they expect from you, it won't be a two-way street. It'll be very uneven. They'll cheat, they'll lie, they'll criticize, they'll manipulate, but you're expected to remain perfect. Otherwise, you'll probably be replaced or deemed unstable. And that's just sort of the built-in setup after the idealization phase. 4, pathological lying and excuses. There's always an excuse for everything. even things that don't require excusing. They make up lies faster than you can question them. They're constantly blaming others. It is never, ever, 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 ever their fault. They spend more time rationalizing their behavior than improving it. Oof. When I heard that one, right to the gut. They spend more time rationalizing their behavior than trying to improve it. Even when caught in a lie, they express no remorse or embarrassment. And sometimes it seems like they might even want you to catch them. I was once with somebody who, this is Jillian riffing obviously, had a clear garbage can in his bathroom that generally only had like floss and Q-tips. Well, he wasn't a big Q-tip guy, but bathroom related products. You get the gist. And one day I was in there and there was a Starbucks cup staring at me with the girl's name as I was peeing. It was just looking right at me through that clear trash basket. And so I was like, hey, who is so-and-so? Whatever the girl's name was on the Starbucks mug. He had no idea what I was talking about, of course. And then, goes on, maybe someone broke into my apartment and put it in there. I literally don't know anyone who goes to Starbucks. He went that far. I was like, it's the most popular coffee. You're telling me you don't know anyone who drinks Starbucks? Isn't that an absurd thing to say? And he just doubled down that he didn't have, quadrupled down that he didn't have a girl there. And then a few days later, the truth came out. Again, no remorse or embarrassment at all. Just like, well, I did have somebody at the place, but I really didn't see her with the Starbucks, so I'm super confused, and Starbucks is so pos. I don't know anyone who drinks Starbucks. Okay, that's the type of thing we're talking about. I'm not calling this person a psychopath, to be clear. It's not what I said. I was just citing an example of their behavior. Number 5, let's keep it moving, folks. Focuses on your mistakes and ignores their own. If they're 2 hours late, they won't forget that you were once 5 minutes late 4 years ago. If you point out their inappropriate behavior, they will always be quick to turn the conversation around on you. You might adopt perfectionist qualities in this relationship. You probably already had them, which is probably why you stick around in this type of relationship. You're very aware that any mistake can and will be used against you. And so you proceed accordingly. In reflecting on my own involvement in these types of dynamics, Jillian riffing yet again, I've thought about how I sort of gamified these types of relationships. I used to love playing video games as a kid, loved playing board games, loved inventing games. I was always playing games. And then I stopped playing games. I became an adult, and it was very rare that I played games. And the few game nights I attended were kind of traumatic socially. So the way that I got that game energy out was by engaging with these types of backwards flying pigeons with no feathers, with these cuckoo birds, trying to see if I could beat the level, can I win this game? Of course, there's also an addiction to suffering piece. There's a deservability piece. There's a lot of reasons why people like me get involved in dynamics like this. I'm not going to go too much into that today because I'm trying to cap this at around 90 minutes, and there's only so much terrain we can cover. But perfectionists are prone to these types of dynamics simply because they force you to be perfect, to fit into a particular box that this psychopath has placed you in, that you have to behave this way. And there's that constant striving and yearning to get back what you once had in that idealization phase, that honeymoon phase, what my ex called the magic carpet ride, when it was magical and pure, when it was good, when it was delicious. Okay, number 6, we got to move on. We got him. Anytime I mention my ex or feel his energy, I'm like, all right, let's keep going, guys. It's funny. I love you, man. I hope you're well. I do. I really hope you're well. And I also hope you're far away. Number 6, you find yourself explaining the basic elements of human respect to a full-grown man or woman. These are Jackson MacKenzie's words, not mine. Please don't get mad at me. You find yourself explaining the basic elements of human respect to a full-grown man or woman. I want you to think about that for a second. Normal people understand fundamental concepts like honesty and kindness. I remember someone in my life, someone who used to be in my life, I would get into these arguments about honesty because he was always like, yeah, it never serves me to be honest. Like, look what I listened to you again, Jill. I was honest. And look how that blew up in my face. It's like, yeah, because you did something super fucked up. And then you were honest about it, but there are still going to be consequences, right? So these types of individuals, I'm laughing, but it's horrifying. You'll get into these debates trying to explain like why honesty, and then you have to kind of shift your logic and go, well, yeah, I guess if you're constantly doing atrocious shit to people or hiding critical information from them or being really nice to their face and going behind their back doing something else, like, yeah, I would get why you would want to lie to service yourself, I suppose, but and then when you're honest, you get then they're mad at you and then they yell at you or then you don't go, whatever the consequences are. So now you're coming to me saying this is why it's bad to be honest when like, wow, we're in total crazy land. What about being a good person? And then when you're honest, it tracks, right? These types of conversations that you have to have, this is not normal. This is not normal. For some of you, you might be hearing this list and going, this is so obvious, Jillian, of course, like don't engage with these types of people. For others of you, you might really be hearing this the way that I did, which is that you needed this. And so my hope is that for those of you who feel like you've got this on lock, you could fast forward, you could put me at 2x speed, whatever you want to do. But also bear in mind that sometimes the things that we feel like we've really got on lock are actually the things that we're deceiving ourselves that we've got on lock, and we actually have a tremendous amount of work to do. So yeah, psychopaths often appear to be childlike and innocent, but do not let this mask fool you. No adult with a truly healthy mind needs to be explained these basic elements of human respect, right? So if you find yourself starting to have to explain these very fundamental concepts, we're probably in this personality disorder category. 7, selfishness and crippling thirst for attention. They drain the energy from you and they consume your entire life. We're starting to get into energy vampire terrain. I'm not going to go too hard into that terrain today, again, for the sake of time, but we will go there. The demand for adoration that these characters have is absolutely insatiable. They eat it up and they need it. They feed off of it. A lot of you hear the term supply if you're in any sort of narcissistic recovery community, right? And then they're on to their new supply or target. People that they're with are the people that they target for energy. Many coaches and therapists deem supply because that's truly how the narcissist views them and receives them. They are just fuel. They are supply. And the narcissist in particular, but all of these energies feed off of the energy of others. And in a relationship with a psychopath, you're often groomed to believe that you're the only one who can make them happy. And then by the end, you start to go, I think anyone with a pulse could possibly fit this role. It's just about giving them attention and energy. It's not actually anything truly about me. But the truth is that no one can fill the void of a psychopath's soul. And I loved that Jackson MacKenzie used the term soul there, and he does get into soul quite a bit, which I absolutely adored. Go read that book if you're feeling any sort of call. I'm not going to read his whole book to you out loud. You can just listen to the audiobook. But I am going through all 30 red flags, and we're only at 8. Here we are. 8 the Great. This type of character accuses you of feeling emotions that they are intentionally provoking. Come on, get mad with me about it. Get mad. I want you to get mad. There are a few of you that are still asleep to the fact that you're sleeping with, you're having sex with a psychopath. I've been in session with you. I've heard these stories. This episode is for you. Come on. They accuse you of feeling emotions that they are manufacturing. They are intentionally provoking them. They call you jealous after blatantly flirting with their ex in front of you. They call you needy after you get out of a surgery and they ignore you for 3 days. They use your manufactured reactions to then garner sympathy from other targets. Maybe they try to prove how hysterical or unstable you've become. And you might have considered yourself a very fun, loving, easygoing person prior to getting involved with the psychopath. But an encounter with the psychopath can temporarily turn that notion upside down. Number 9, you find yourself playing detective, and that's never happened in any other relationship, right? So I'm not just talking about you're always insecure, you're always worried in every relationship. Are they cheating? Who are they out with? I'm talking about you've never, ever, 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 ever before in any other relationship done anything either sneaky or like trying to look around or Google them or find out about a past lover. But in this relationship, you're seeking answers to a feeling that you can't quite explain. And it's like you're trying to crack the case. Number 10, you seem to be the only person who sees their true colors. No matter what they do, these characters always seem to have a fan club cheering for them. And the psychopath uses these people for attention, for that energy supply, literally to run their life. They cannot do it without the attention of other people. Money and resources. And a lot of these psychopaths are in very codependent relationships with family members where that's how they're surviving. This person strategically distracts their fan club, whether, friends and family, whatever it is, with shallow praise. And often psychopaths are able to maintain superficial friendships for far longer than romantic relationships. Now, whether you're actually the only one who sees their true colors, that's another topic. But you seem to be the only one. You seem to be the only one. 11. You fear that any fight with this type of person could be your last. So normal couples argue to resolve issues. They get in arguments, they resolve the issue. But psychopaths make it clear that negative conversations will jeopardize the relationship. If you air an issue, especially if this is a conversation regarding their behavior, you're putting the relationship at jeopardy. Might result in silent treatment. Somehow it'll get turned around on you. You'll apologize and forgive quickly. Otherwise, they'll lose interest in you or discard you. 12. This person steadily erodes your boundary. Jackson MacKenzie wrote, slowly and steadily. I don't think it's always slow. I've experienced complete erosion very quickly, and that's also on me, how much I've allowed for that. And a total sidebar for a moment, I've been rereading Medium Mentor by Marianne DeMarco. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Marianne the Medium, Gabrielle Bernstein talks about her a lot. They're good friends. But she's someone who became famous as a medium and also has a very grounded 3D life, which seems unusual or not super common. And so I've respected her work, and I felt like I haven't read that book in a while. I'm shutting down, in many ways, my intuitive business for a lot of reasons, but one of which has to do with the boundaries with spirit that I've worked to negotiate and have struggled with. How much empathy, how much I feel my client's stuff, how much it enters my life, despite the boundaries that I set with spirit. You know, I was taught by several mediums that I train with to set boundaries with spirit. You have to, hours when you're on and off, when you'll channel, when you won't, what kinds of things do you want to see, right? When I first started remote viewing and I could see missing or lost people, then I would often see what happened to them and their bodies, and it was very disturbing and dark and nauseating. And so I set boundaries. Show me this symbol if they've overdosed. Show me this symbol if this, just to create spaciousness in my mind to feel safe enough to do that. I'm not someone who can watch gory shows or violence. I get very, 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 very sensitive. So I learned to set boundaries, many of which I found spirit respected, fabulous, but some of which I have found that I can't seem to maintain that boundary. But Marianne describes how you can create that contract with your spirit team so that they respect your boundaries, so that we can live a balanced life, right? Maybe you decide you're not going to channel or do a reading when you're around your kids, or perhaps you're wide open in the early morning, but you want to be off when it's dark. Or maybe you don't want to deal with predictions or health or politics. You get to decide exactly where your boundaries need to be. And so I went back to check. Did she describe what happens if spirit doesn't uphold their end of it when you're creating a psychic contract? No one had spoken to me about that. What happens if I say I don't want to feel my twin flame's feelings? I don't want to know when he's hurting. I don't want to feel that connection empathically anymore. But then they don't listen, right? Like, what happens when you try to set a boundary and somebody doesn't respect it? That question we need to talk about more in spiritual communities. So I will do another episode about that. And I'm not sure why I was guided to share that now, but I guess, now I know. Now I know. Oh my God, that's incredible. Okay, whole other episode. Hannah, take note. We're going to do a whole episode about creating psychic contracts. I thank God I just solved that. Oh my God, bless you, podcast community. That changed everything that moment. Because, I was like literally racking my brain going back. She doesn't talk about this. My old mentor, Katie, who hopefully I'll have on here in a couple of weeks, didn't talk about that, although maybe we'll talk about it on that episode. The point being, psychopaths slowly and steadily erode your boundaries. Things of the light should honor your boundaries. Spirit does honor boundaries. I think to a point though, right? Like if I'm setting an egoic boundary, and this is where I would differ with Marianne DeMarco, my experience has not been that spirit just obeys. Like I just offer my terms of the contract and then there's no negotiation and there's just complete agreement. So I want to talk to her about that too. We'll get her on here too. Anyway, back to the psychopaths. They slowly and steadily erode your boundaries, or they quickly erode your boundaries. If you're someone like me who is so used to having your boundaries stomped on, they might do it real fast and you might just take it. They often criticize you with condescending jokes or just a joking sort of attitude. They often smirk when you try to express yourself. To me, this is interesting that Jackson MacKenzie put this all as number 12, because this is a lot of different things to me, but it's all one. Teasing becomes the primary mode of communication in your relationship. They subtly belittle your intelligence and abilities, and if you point this out, they'll call you sensitive or crazy. I want to reiterate, teasing becomes the primary mode of communication in your relationship. The primary mode. If you point this out, their attempts to belittle you, they call you overly sensitive or crazy, of course, and you might begin to feel resentful and upset, but you learn to push away those feelings in favor of maintaining the peace. A big theme, right? So you're already sensing the red flag within our own hearts, that propensity to self-abandon, to be that doormat, to take the pain in service of someone else's joy. 13, they withhold attention and undermine your self-esteem. While they once showered you with nonstop attention and admiration, they suddenly seem bored by you, or they treat you with silence, or they get annoyed with your interest. They get annoyed with you being interested in maintaining or continuing the passionate relationship that they created. They make you feel like a chore. 14, they expect you to read their mind. They expect you to read their mind. This can be very enticing for a psychic. The narcissist empath trap is a trap for a reason. It can be very enticing. If they stop communicating with you for several days, it's your fault for not knowing about the plans they never told you about, or there'll always be an excuse that makes them out to be the victim to go along with whatever they've done. And they make important decisions about the relationship and inform everyone except you. That one's too painful to dive into further. Ugh, chilling. 15, you feel on edge around this person. This is really, really, really important. You feel on edge around this person, but you still want them to like or love you. Have compassion for yourself when you hear this, if this rings true for you, like it did for me. You find yourself writing off most of their questionable behavior as accidental or insensitive because you're in constant competition with others for their attention and praise. They don't seem to care when you leave their side. They can just move on to the next source of energy. That's the mask that they want to show you. "16, they've got an unusual amount of crazy people in their past. Any ex-partner or friend who didn't come crawling back to them will most likely be labeled jealous or bipolar or a narcissist. And don't get it twisted, they'll probably speak this way about you to the next target, right? So once you escape this dynamic and they're on to their next victim, their next target, the new supply, they very well, if they haven't healed, if they haven't had any sort of awakening, will talk about you just the same. Oh yeah, she was crazy. She was whatever they said about their exes to you, that was awful. 17, provokes jealousy and rivalries while maintaining their cover of innocence. They once directed all their attention onto you when they were in that idealization phase, which can make it especially confusing when they begin to withdraw and focus on other people. These types of characters, these backwards walking giraffes, they do things, no shade to giraffes, they do things that constantly make you doubt your place in their heart. By design, intentionally. It's very sick. 18, idealization, as we talked about, love bombing and flattery. So when you first meet, things often move very fast. They tell you how much you have in common, how perfect you are for them. You're so smart, you're so funny. You're my dream girl, whatever it is. Like a chameleon, they'll mirror your hopes, your dreams, and your insecurities in order to form an immediate bond of trust and excitement. They constantly initiate communication, constantly, and seem to be fascinated with you on every level, right? That can also feel so good to be on the receiving end of. It's intoxicating. 19, they compare you to everyone else in their life. Again, this is not exclusive to psychopaths. I wouldn't take any one of these traits in isolation and label someone a psychopath just because they're prone to comparison, right? This is a list that's meant to be viewed in aggregate, run through your own discernment. That having been said, they compare you to everyone else in their life, ex-lovers, friends, family members, and your eventual replacement. In idealizing, they make you feel special by telling you how much better you are than those people. Then when they're devaluing you, they use these comparisons to make you feel jealous and inferior. So they're always positioning people against each other. 20, the qualities they once claimed to admire about you suddenly become glaring faults. At first, they appeal to your deepest vanities and vulnerabilities, observing and mimicking exactly what they think you want to hear. But after you're hooked, they start to use these things against you, and you spend more and more time trying to prove yourself worthy to the very same person who once said you were perfect. I think that's one of the saddest parts for me about witnessing people in these types of dynamics and then being in these dynamics myself, is the amount of effort that these victims go in. They put in so much effort trying to prove themselves worthy to someone who truly just treats them like shit, you know? And who also had said you were perfect, but then you weren't, right? Very dark. 21. Bubbles is snoring. Are you feeling so relaxed talking about psychopaths? Are you like your mom who I relax watching Escape the Cult documentaries? Bubbles is so chill right now. He's like, I love hearing you talk about psychopaths. I hope your snores pick up. Okay. 21. Cracks in their mask. There are fleeting moments when their charming, cute, innocent persona is replaced by something else entirely. You see a sight that never came out in the idealization phase, and it is a rough sight to behold that is cold, inconsiderate, and manipulative. You start to notice that their personality just doesn't add up. And this part, I'm going to hold your hand when I say this. Put out your hand. I'm holding it right now. You might start to realize that the person that you fell in love with doesn't actually seem to exist. Okay, 22. Easily bored. This is a very common trait. Easily bored, require a lot of stimulation, and they're constantly surrounded by other people. They need to be stimulated and praised at all times. They cannot tolerate being alone for an extended period of time. And even if they appear to be alone, maybe for the afternoon, they're generally on their phone, engaging with other people, getting more energy. It's very hard for them to actually be alone. And they become quickly uninterested in anything that doesn't impact them directly in a positive or thrilling way. 23, we're almost there. You guys are doing so well. You're doing great. Ask your body what you need. I'm going to chug some water. We've got this. We're plowing through. 23, triangulation. This is a really, really, really sickening phenomenon. They'll surround themselves with former lovers or potential lovers or anyone else who provides them with that added special attention. Like, they will triangulate, they will position one woman against another or one person against another. And often they'll include people that they've previously denounced or called you superior to, which can then make you feel really confused. But they triangulate to create the perception that they are in high demand at all times. The psychopath creates the perception that they are in high demand at all times. 24, covert abuse. Abuse that isn't as obvious, right? You know abuse when it's really overt. I remember actually in the building where I met my perceived twin flame, it was a co-living, so we all just individually rented these rooms, and it was kind of like a college dorm where we shared a kitchen or a common room and a bathroom, but then these different bedrooms. There was a woman who lived in my co-living towards the end of my stay, and it was heartbreaking, a very young woman who had an abusive boyfriend who beat the shit out of her. And one time, so severely, her entire face was busted open, blood all over her room. How do I know there was blood all over her room? Well, when the cops arrived and she's outside shaking like a leaf talking to the cops, they asked me to go, and she was, they were trying to convince her to go to the hospital. She didn't want to press charges. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She didn't want to get in the ambulance. She was trying to say she was fine, and I can't even describe what her face looked like. Oh my God. So an officer, or maybe it was a medic with the ambulance and EMT, I honestly don't remember. I was so overwhelmed, asked me to go into her room and find her license. They needed me to get her ID. So she told me, it's in this purse next to my bed, whatever. I go into her room, and it was the craziest shit. I've never seen that much blood. But then there's Cheetos and a bong and glass shattered, but just blood everywhere. And we convinced her to, I guess, do like a temporary restraining order. And then a few nights later, she snuck him back into the co-living. Like, she invited him over. And then I was talking to the owners of the co-living at the time. And then the police, like, is there something we can do? Because I don't feel safe in a room 4 inches from where I'm sleeping that there's a man beating up another woman, but I can't do anything if she's allowing it and she won't. Like, what? And it was, at the time, I think it was 2020, or maybe it was the end of 2019. I think it was the top of 2020. I just couldn't imagine, why would a woman invite back a man who just beat her up? Like, I couldn't get how someone could ever be in a romantic relationship with a psychopath, because I had never been in a romantic relationship with a psychopath. All my previous romantic partners had been pretty loving. I mean, they all had their shortcomings. Don't you worry. They all had their shortcomings. Of course, they were human, but they were mostly loving relationships, My experience with these types of characters did not come from my romantic life, so I just couldn't imagine, like, your romantic partner is the one you get to choose, right? It's not your family that you've been born into. You literally get free will choice to pick any romantic partner, and you're going to go back to someone who clobbers you and I guess hates you so much that he wants you to suffer, and he hurts you, and he has such uncontrollable rage that he beats you up. I had so much judgment, and I thought I would never, ever, ever find myself in an abusive relationship with a man. I would never sleep with someone who mistreated me. And, life and spirit have a funny way of humbling us. But the point is, we're used to seeing abuse like that and thinking that's abuse. But there's a lot of other abuse that isn't as obvious. Emotional, mental, verbal abuse. Jackson MacKenzie writes that you likely won't even understand you were in an abusive relationship until long after it's over. Through the personalized idealization and then subtle devaluation, a psychopath can effectively erode the identity of any chosen target. They're often highly perceptive, and I used to call it highly intuitive. They're able to read energy really well, so they know how to pump you up, and they know how to tear you down. 25. Pity plays and sympathy stories. Their bad behavior always has some sob story roots. They claim to behave that way because of an abusive ex, an abusive parent, or an abusive cat. I literally laughed out loud when he said abusive cat. He throws that in there to be funny and facetious, right? Like, they'll make up literally anything just to get the pity. They'll say all they want is peace and quiet, or they'll say that they hate drama, and yet there's more drama surrounding this person than anyone you've ever known. 26. The mean and sweet cycle. Jekyll and Hyde, I used to call it. Sometimes they shower you with attention. Sometimes they ignore you. Sometimes they criticize you. They certainly treat you differently in public than they do behind closed doors. They could be talking about marriage one day and breaking up the next. You never know where you stand with these characters is the point. They're hot and cold, they're in, they're out, mean and sweet. They put forth as little effort as humanly possible and then step it up only when you try to disengage. Oof. Sorry, bud. I'm speaking truth. 27. This person becomes your entire life. When you're in a relationship with a psychopath, you're spending more time with them and their friends, possibly, and less time with your own support network. They become all you really think about or talk about anymore. You often isolate yourself in order to make yourself more available to them. Maybe you're canceling your own plans to do things with them, or you're eagerly waiting by the phone in that desperate, anxious energy for their next communication. The relationship ultimately seems to involve a lot of sacrifices on your end, but very few on theirs. 28, arrogance. Despite the humble, sweet image they present in early stages, you start to notice an unmistakable air of superiority about them, and they'll just talk down to you. 29, so close, my friends, so close. Backstabbing gossip that changes on a whim. They plant little seeds of poison. They'll idealize someone to their face, then complain about them behind their backs. You might even find yourself disliking or resenting people you've never even met, just because of the stories that this person is telling you. For some reason, you might even feel special for being the one he or she complains to. Like, aw, I'm their trash receptacle. Aw, isn't that so sweet? But really, I used to get off on, I really did. I used to enjoy feeling like I'm the person that people complain to. That's one of the more wounded aspects that drove my intuitive counseling, healing, coaching career. Like there are some aspects of it that are really beautiful and whole, and there are some aspects that come from wounding. And one of the components of the wounding is I used to enjoy feeling like I could give really good advice, and I'm just the person that somebody trusts enough to complain to tell the shit that's going on in their life. But this is not something that should make us feel special. Once the relationship turns sour, they'll run back to everyone that they had once insulted to you, but now they'll be lamenting about you. 30. We made it, fam. You did it. I know that was a lot. 30 is just your feelings. Your natural love and compassion will have transformed into overwhelming panic and anxiety. You'll find yourself apologizing and crying more than you ever have in your life. Maybe your sleep gets disrupted. Maybe you feel anxious or unhinged. After a run-in with a psychopath, most victims will feel insane, exhausted, shocked, empty, drained. It'll certainly tear apart your whole life. Okay, breathe. I want you to remember immediately that the world is mostly full of good people. I don't want any of us to miss out on that simply because we've been hurt. It's not about closing our hearts. Part of why I went into this in such detail and went through this whole list with you guys is so that we can have clear eyes and open hearts. Clear eyes and open hearts. So we can choose to give our love to people who can receive it, who can actually allow this love to work on them and change them, and who can even reciprocate that love. Right? Who can reciprocate that love. Now I've got Bubbles panting by my side and pawing at me. So even though I had intentions of going into borderline personality disorder next, and then I want to talk about how do we heal all of this? Is it possible for these personality types to heal? Can a narcissist actually heal and change and grow? Can an abuser stop being abusive? And also, can people who fall prey to these dynamics, can they escape? Yes, absolutely. That'll give you right now, yes, you can be delivered. You will be delivered. But how do we heal and how do we get to a place where we can actually escape? Unfortunately, due to time, today is not the day we're going to answer those questions. Stay tuned for other opportunities in the future for us to dive into that. We'll certainly be getting into it. But I wanted to conclude with just a few higher level remarks, zooming a bit out, maybe applying a spiritual lens, so that your orientation is proper and divine. Earlier, I stated that these individuals are highly perceptive, and that I used to call that intuitive. I want to really illustrate the point that these personality types, these individuals who have turned away from God, right? If you're intentionally harming people and practicing getting better at being craftier at harming people, you're not of God. You're not a godly man or woman. You're not divine. You're not a light worker. Fill in your synonym. You're choosing the devil, Satan. Again, a lot of people might feel uncomfortable with this Christian languaging, but it's just the reality of spiritual warfare and principality warfare, whether or not you believe it. The enemy, if you're on Team Light, so that would be like Satan, the devil energy, these darker energies, the enemy cannot read minds. So I want to make a distinction. God is omniscient, omnipresent, right? And the intuitive skill sets that I've been talking about, that heart perception, that empathy is a gift from God. That is a godly, divine gift of the light. Tapping into a degree of that omniscience and omnipresence. When someone is in devil energy, so these characters that I talked about today, when they're manipulating you, when they're pulling at your heartstrings, when they're tugging you around, when they're triangulating, when they're lying, when they're deceiving, and it often seems like they're reading your mind or reading your energy, they are not. They are not. That is not actually what they're doing. Satan is highly skilled at watching game footage, of watching the footage back, tracking the trends, noticing things, and from a finite place, input systems to try to destroy. But that is very different than having a godly gift of prophecy or intuition or healing or being a seer. So that's a really, really important distinction. I want you to feel bolstered and empowered if you are trying to escape such a dark person or energy. And often it really is a matter of escape. It's not just like going through a breakup or going through a friendship loss or leaving the job. It's like a matter of true escape, an opportunity for true deliverance. I also, in passing, mentioned that they use time as a weapon, as a form of abuse. And I also want to really illustrate the enemy has run out of time, so he tries to waste yours. The enemy has run out of time, so he will try to waste yours. Interacting with these types of characters is like they're trying to hit you over the head with a baseball bat and then trying to sell you a helmet. I also want you to remember the enemy will go for your identity, because if you forget your royalty, if you forget that you're deserving, if you forget that, you will be such easy prey for this type of warfare. And yes, interacting with these types of individuals is very much a matter of spiritual warfare. I highly recommend when you do escape, and again, we'll talk about this in future episodes most likely, to keep your cards incredibly close to the vest, chest, whatever the saying is. There is often a Hoover period where they try to come back after a discard and suck you back, and you're probably very vulnerable, and you probably still love them, and you probably miss them, and there will be ebbs and flows in your grief process, but you need to be ready to stay away forever. And whatever that means that you need to have in place, have that in place. Staying entangled with psychopaths and these types of individuals will keep you trapped in other people's shadows your whole life. People try to destiny swap by rubbing elbows with other people. The rubbing elbows phrase is a phrase for a reason. You can find yourself attached to a vampiric energy that takes everything from you, your destiny, your light, and you have to protect and safeguard your light. It's a spiritual responsibility. It's just your responsibility, period, as a human. So my sincerest apologies that we're not getting into borderline today, sociopathy today, I wanted to get more into, and then talk about parts work as a mechanism for healing and so many other aspects of these cluster B personality disorders and healing from them. Some say that's not possible, some say it is. Stay tuned. You can certainly heal from being a victim of these types of perpetrators. We will get to that in the future. For now, my hope is that illuminating these red flags and providing these analogies and metaphors unlocked a strength in you, unlocked clarity, and a passion to restore your sense of self-love. If you are someone who has gone through the brutal, abusive, gut-wrenching experience of attempting to love one of these people, and that's just so divine. I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, but somehow a text from an amazing man praising God just came in. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. I love that so much. Thank you, Chris. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your day or night, and I'll talk to you next time on It's Time. Thank you so much for tuning in to It's Time with Jillian Melissa. If you're feeling like it's time to leave that toxic relationship, launch that business, share your voice with the world, if you're feeling like it's time for whatever, it probably is. So I invite you to trust your intuitive compass. And if you're feeling like it's time to connect with me, I invite you to follow me on Instagram at JillianMelissa_intuition. That's really the hub of all my content, and using the link in bio, my link tree, you can access links to book a private session with me. You can join my monthly membership community through Patreon. I post upcoming workshops, group channeling classes, intuitive guidance gatherings, and much more. So that's really the best way to stay connected with my energy. My hope is that you bestow love on all those who cross your path. And until we meet again, I love you.